Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's a very special Independence Day here in the United States of America episode, and joined by friend of the show, Harris from one. That's silly. What is going to be an enemy of the show, and we're going to have him on, and we're going to go anyway. So, Harris from One Penny at a Time podcast. How are you doing, man? What's up?
Doing great. Thank you so much for always having me on, Russ. It's always good to have a little bit of stock talk on this beautiful 4th of July. Hopefully, it's not over 100 degrees today, but we'll take what we can.
Yeah, here in Chicago, it's been little bit rough. Not as bad as Florida. And speaking of down that way, you we've never talked about this. I've never really heard you talk about it. So, lived. I don't know. Are you from, or how would you describe it? You lived in Puerto Rico for. I hope you like those R rolling. I did that specially for you,
A sip of the agua.
dude. Traer. I forget the word. No, sip. That means to bring. Sip of the agua.
Yes.
¿Cómo se dice
Beber.
sip of the agua en español, señor?
Beber.
Bebe.
Beber.
There it is. I asked them, how do you say? Okay, enough of the Spanish talk. We're not going to go that deep here. So, what's it like in Puerto
Sure.
Rico? With it being Independence Day, was there any kind of nod to that? Did people recognize it? Tell me a little bit about Puerto Rico and how long you were there. Like going through the schooling system, was personal finance ever a thing? Does anybody really talk about stocks there? Fill us in.
Sure. So I lived there from age 5 up until age 19. So originally, I was born in New York, moved to Puerto Rico when I was 5. Um, Pretty good years there. It's a very simple life. I lived in a very small town on the southwest coast of Puerto Rico. It's a big beach town. Schooling system, meh. I'm gonna leave it at that. It's not the best. Um, no financial literacy in school. No no stock talk. It's funny. One of the very first times I ever heard somebody talk about stocks, one of my best friends, his grandparents were Cuban and German, so they had a big factory in New York, and they had retired. And then in 2008, I saw his grandmother cry, and I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "The stock market crashed, and we had too much in the stock market, and now we're effed." So that's actually one of the very first talks I've ever had about the stock market. And at that time, I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But now I'm looking at it, it's like, ooh, and think about it. If somebody who had their nest egg into that and like their whole retirement, and it's gone in a second. So,
That's it's kind of weird you say that, but I remember my mom and hearing other people saying like, I'm pulling the money out. Like this is what the hell, our retirement money is gone. It's all, and even then I remember, and I don't know if you think of that now, and you can tell people is that, well, it's only gone if you sell, and especially if you have like broad based mutual funds, like it's gonna come back. It's gonna be okay. So I know a lot of adults that ended up freaking selling, and they're like, I'm going to wait till the market recovers. And that's right. That's that whole timing the market thing, which is just so hard to do.
it is. And if we want to kind of go recent, I mean, I don't really consider this a full crash, but obviously last October, I was still pretty much starting. And I know there's people who are like sweating it out. Um, I think the biggest thing to look at is your timeline. If do you need this money in 5 years? No, ignore. Keep working, keep going. Take that opportunity to stack up more, to be honest. So I want to. 2020, I didn't get to go through that. Obviously, I got to see a lot of the news and watch people react to it. But then it literally was like the biggest recovery. It was like the quickest recovery ever. So I actually want to see how I would handle mentally a real crash that lasts a couple years, or we're linear for a couple years. I think it'd be a lot of lessons that I can learn. And, as an investor, you keep learning and you keep developing yourself into the better you. So I'm actually excited for one of those. It's kind of weird to say that and see what it comes out of it.
Yeah, I do it 100%. And so were you investing during the pandemic crash of 2020 then? Or
No. So for me at the time, um, I was solely focused on saving all funds to get our home that we have today, because I live in Austin, and I knew that the Tesla Giga plant was opening up here in Austin. I saw this as an opportunity. It's like, if I can get in before this thing opens up, that is going to leave more profit and more opportunity for me to use that money than I would at the stock market. And I literally scoured weeks and months of research to find the perfect location. And where we moved, it has an Amazon warehouse 5 minutes from us. It has a high school a minute from us, and Tesla's 15 minutes from us. The value in the house has already gone up 6 figures. I don't think I would have done that with the stock market. So that was my main priority during the pandemic.
Has that been your best investment so far? I mean, dude, that sounds like you nailed it. You looked at it kind of reminds me of Wayne Gretzky. He has a famous saying: he doesn't skate to where the puck has been; he skates to where it's going. So you kind of skated yourself over to where people might likely be going, right?
Yeah, and at the time, not only with Tesla, but Oracle and all these companies were moving a lot of their operation to Texas overall. Samsung is building in Taylor, Texas, a gigafactory, and all these companies are doing this here. So for me, it's like I saw that as the opportunity. It's like if I don't get in now, I don't think I'll be able to ever get in, or it'd be very hard to get in. So that was a bigger priority. And I was still following the stock market, and I was still learning and, watching a bunch of content creators and learning. So that way, when I was ready, I'd have a good fit for it. But the bigger opportunity was with gaining real estate. And then if we ever want to move to a bigger house or do that, we have so much equity, then that's just going to make it even easier to then move to the bigger house or move to another city or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. And to goes to anybody listening, I mean, there's always a trade-off. If you have money over here, well, there's a cost of it not doing something over there. So, we're kind of looking at the same thing. We have a house that was built in the early 70s, and I've been kind of putting off doing some updating and repairing. So we're kind of looking around and be like, this place is a dump. Like it's like falling into disrepair. So, and I'm like, yeah, but our investment portfolio, look, we're almost at 6 figures in the taxable. So do you ever think about that? So we're reaching a point where I may have to be taking a chunk of that money to update our house. I look at it as an investment. Like if we're upgrading and updating and beautifying this dump hole, that's not that bad. I'm playing, but
No.
but that's a real life thing where these real life situations crop up. And back in the day when the crash happened, I was investing. I was a dividend investor, and it was just like they say, being a kid in a candy store. There was so many things that were just stupidly cheap. And, I wish to God I bought more McDonald's. And I hear you talk about that, right? That's one of the ones you'd love to get in, but it's never comes down hardly.
It doesn't. And last year, I had the chance. I remember it was in the 220s after the whole Russia closure, because that was a pretty decent amount of profits for McDonald's. McDonald's had a really big presence in Russia, and I said, you know what? At that time, I said my thought process was I think this can go lower, because I think that maybe once a couple earning reports come out, that may affect it. Wrong. But that's where you go. You don't know what the market's going to do. I think eventually, maybe the end of the year, I'll just pull the plug and start with it. But what I'll have to do in McDonald's is just to do it in smaller chunks, and like $25, $50 amounts, and just build it up over time. If not, I mean, McDonald's is almost $300 at this point. So it's like, how much more am I going to wait for it? If it ever goes down to a significant amount, then we kind of put more money to it. But even just starting in a smaller batch, that's just the way to kind of get into it. That was actually a really good piece of advice my friend from Twitter, Tom, the savings captain, gave me. He goes, this is just one stock that you just got to suck up and pay a little bit more for it. And I know for you, there was the same deal with Pepsi. It was when you're doing your weekly challenge, and it's like, you're sucking up for it, but that one paid out pretty good for you in the long run.
Yeah, so far. And it's funny, even though I learned a lesson with Pepsi, I still don't apply it to other ones. And I you guys that listen, I keep saying that, dude, I was looking at valuations, and when I was buying it at like 140 or 141, people, whatever you look at, Pepsi's really overvalued. It's stupidly overvalued, too expensive. Wait for it to get down below 120. And I remember thinking, you know what? I'm going to see what happens. Maybe I'm buying it way at the tippy top. And then sure enough, like not too long ago, it was almost $200 a share. And I'd love it to be back in the 140s. I'd probably start adding some more. So it's kind of like you highlighted, man, perfectly. You have to pay up for premium sometime. You have to pay up for that quality. By the way, do you eat McDonald's? Do you go to the Mickey D's?
I will admit, I still do.
We're not
French fries are
judging.
the
We're
best.
not judging.
French fries are the best, but also it's gonna sound crazy, but McDonald's has their own recipe for Coke, and their Coke is superior to anybody else.
I want to know. I've heard that, and that's right. They got to be put. Do you know what it is? I mean, it's a big old secret, right?
It's a secret. I forgot what somebody had mentioned that, and I could be completely wrong on this, so please don't quote me. McDonald's has a specific measurement for the width of the straw hole, where apparently carbonation comes up at the perfect way for the carbonation to change the flavoring of it. That's what I've heard. I wouldn't doubt it because food is a science, right? So who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised with it. But I know for sure McDonald's gets their own recipe for syrup.
Oh man, that's it. Now I've got to get on the inside. I'm gonna go be a fry guy at McDonald's just so I can find out. Just incessantly asking questions about the mixture for the soda.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah, it's funny. Oh, by the way, stupid random things just happen to flitter into my head. Do you know the McFlurries, the spoons there? They got that hole on the top.
Yes.
Yeah, do you know what that's for? Because I've seen my own relations try to drink through that hole. McFlurry.
Honestly,
Do you know what that's for?
um, I don't. And the only reason why I don't know is I'm not really big to getting like milkshakes or ice creams, but whenever I do feel like it, the damn machine's always broken, so I never get my opportunity to.
Yeah, so what it's for is that's how they mix it. So instead of like having a beater or a mixer that they have to continually clean, they just made the
Mhm.
spoon that they give to the person. You know what I mean? So they just stick that on, and then the spoon swirls it all around, and then they give it to you. So kind
There
of
you go.
clever. Somebody's thinking at McDonald's. So
They
so we're
are.
do they have McDonald's in Puerto? I'm sure they have them in Puerto Rico, right?
Oh, they do. It's really funny. In my town, there's only one McDonald's. It opened in 1997, and I remember this because when I moved there, is just when they opened it, and this was like if the Pope came to town. This is how big of a deal this was. Like I said, my town, there's like what, maybe 20,000 people. It's a very small town. It's like the first Burger King came there in like 2008, I think. So it's not big deal. There's no Wendy's there. There's no Chipotle there. It's very, 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 small town. You go there, in the actual town of it. There's one house there that is not allowed to be destroyed. It is from like the late 1880s, but it shows how it was living back on the island even before it was Americanized to be completely, or colonized to be completely honest. And it's like a landmark, and there's a lot of it was very interesting, honestly, living in Puerto Rico. It's very chill life. Obviously, some drawbacks are, the crime rate is very high there, and cost of living is ridiculous. A gallon of milk in Puerto Rico is $7.50.
Oof.
Minimum wage is $7.25, and most places there pay minimum wage, so it's very hard to live there overall.
Oh, but I mean, it's amazing that it's like you speak to just the power of why McDonald's is so expensive. It's that brand loyalty. People all over the world love it. Dude, we ate at McDonald's because I wanted to just take the kids there for funsies one day when we were in Dublin. We went to one of the
Mhm.
McDonald's in Dublin, and
Mhm.
interestingly, a lot of people there were eating like the healthier food. I saw people eating, wraps and salads and just not so much of the, for deep fried stuff. Maybe that's here in America. I don't know. That's our
Yeah.
culture, but yeah. And then one last thing about the business of McDonald's is that's again, when you have that brand loyalty, you have pricing power, and businesses like McDonald's have been able to increase their prices as inflation is going up and people are paying it. So that's why the stock price of McDonald's keeps going up, because they're raising their prices, they're making more money, their earnings are going up. And, as we like to say, that the stock price follows earnings. So if
Mhm.
over time, right? Who is it? It's not Buffett. Graham had that quote, right? That over the short term, the market's a voting machine, and over the long term, it's a weighing machine. So that was my philosophy with PepsiCo. I'm like, I think these guys, everywhere I look, people are eating Lay's and drinking the soda, and just they're so diversified. So it
Mhm.
really can be that easy in investing. And do you ever get the feeling, right? Like not singling anybody out, but some places really try to overcomplicate investing and the market, right?
Yeah, and I think for me, right, my rule number one when it comes to investing is do is it a monopoly or do I use this product every day? It's the first thing I have to ask myself. And if I don't use this product every day, okay, then let's dig down and how can this maybe get to me one day is like the way I like to think about it. Sometimes I see with investing, obviously I look at a couple stats. I like to look at dividend payout ratio. I'll look at 52-week low and high. I'll look at PE, the PE compared to S&P, PE compared to the sector in general, and look at
Mhm.
5-year median. So I've been getting more into that, but sometimes you look at this and then you look at McDonald's, you look at Costco, you look at Waste Management. I'm just using examples here of companies with higher PE ratios. If you're to go solely off these metrics, you're probably not going to invest in it because it's overvalued. Sometimes you just need to take away all the fancy numbers and color charts and red, green, yellow, and look at Costco. It's such a strong business. Every time I don't think I've ever seen Costco dead once that I've ever been there. McDonald's, they have I think at this point I think they either close to or have reached 40,000 restaurants. I'm not 100%
It's
sure, but with
crazy.
McDonald's, I forgot what the number was, but I think 95% of it is franchise if I'm not mistaken. And for their franchising fees, the royalty fees, McDonald's owns the land for the most part, and their way they make money is genius. It's a secret, it's a REIT, but without the tax implications. And then you look at Waste Management, trash is never going to go away. It's just that's just simple as them to do that. And you even want to look at it on a branding standpoint, you look at a dumpster, you look at a truck, it's Waste Management. And even with trash, you can build a powerful brand by doing something so simple with color schemes and that. And sometimes you need to look at it that way. It's like, are they going to go away in the next 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 years? You never know, right? Because if I would have gone back to the year 2000, and I asked this to my dad recently because he's not really big into investment, and I'll ask him, Dad, if I would have asked you 20 years ago, would Sears be standing today? He goes, nobody would touch Sears. You never know, but I feel confident those business will stand the test of time.
As somebody that did use Sears back in the day, I
Mm-hmm.
hate to say I'm a little bit older, but I guess I am. It's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't know how old you are, would you know how old you were? Is how the butchering of that saying goes. I heard Ice Cube use it on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I thought, ooh, that'd be slick. And then right here, I'm like, I'm going to use it, and it's like my brain's like, stop, you're messing it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, with Sears, I mean, it's kind of funny with Sears. Two things. I mean, to me as a kid, I remember Kenmore. I mean, my dad would literally swear by that tool brand for everything. And I remember my dad saying, I think Kenmore sold it to either Home Depot or Lowe's. It
No,
might
I
have
think
been
you mean
Lowe's.
Craftsman.
Craftsman, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I thought of the wrong
You
thing.
had
But
for a second, I was like, Kenmore made tools. I don't remember that. I've been out
wait,
of the loop.
Crafts. See, this shows you how handy I am in the house. My wife does all the handiwork. So I just showed myself, and I'll be the first one to say that
So you're holding the
anything with the house.
flashlight when she's repairing things.
It's kind of funny. When my dad came to visit when we got the house, we went to Home Depot and he got us this really cool Ryobi toolkit. And he literally looks at me, he goes, not for you, looks at my wife, for you.
Oh,
Gets her it, and then he gives me the flashlight. You go, this is as much as I'm gonna let you touch. And that's exactly what it is. I hold the flashlight and she's the genius with doing anything repair wise. So I don't touch that aspect of it. But I remember my dad saying when Sears sold their tool brand, it's like there's nothing left here. That
yeah.
was the last thing holding him through. And even if I go back to Sears in like the late 90s, they used to have a video game section. That's actually how I got my first Pokemon game, was at Sears. And I remember this still. I never forget that. And such a powerful name, and it went away.
Oh, don't say that name in the 90s, dude. I look now because for all of those of you that are not in the loop, the original Pokemon, especially cards, I tweeted out one of the Pauls, Jake Paul or Logan Paul, he had
Yep.
a fight or he was at a fight. No, he had a
Hmm.
fight and he has like, you probably know it.
The,
It's like
the $6 million Charizard.
he wears it on a gold chain. It's
Mhm.
encased in like acrylic. It's sealed, but
Yes.
he's flexing a freaking Pokemon card, dude. I worked at Service Merchandise, which was it's a lot of people might not know what that was, but when I would go there and Toys R, I remember seeing all this Pokemon cards and thinking like, this is so dumb. I'm buying these football cards instead. My God, if I could just go back in time and just buy those boxes, keep them sealed, I probably could retire right now, But hey,
I had a lot of Pokemon merch as a kid that are worth a lot of money today, but back then you don't know. My mom's like, "Oh, you're grown up now. Get rid of it." Up there, obviously, I have the plushies back there. I still have one of my original plushies from when I was a kid in pretty good condition, but I'm never getting rid of it. That's a forever hold.
and
And
you
you know
speak.
what? It's like my parents say, "Oh, it's a phase. You'll grow out of it." As I was having my morning coffee, I'm never growing out of it. Nope,
Don't do it. Don't do it, man.
absolutely not.
You speak to something awesome because that can tie into investing and in the stock market. I mean, things that are in demand but scarce have more value. So when everybody's throwing away their football and sporting cards in the 60s and 70s, all the parents, and then everybody in the when I started collecting in the late 80s and early 90s, we saved everything. Guess what? Those aren't worth that much. But when stuff is in demand, but there's less of them, price goes up. Exactly why companies, when they're buying back shares, the price goes up. But if they're just diluting it and everybody can have it because it's available, then the price is going to go down. So I'll just use
Exactly.
that as a really, really rough segue into asking you, because I have it bullet pointed on my sheet. Bullet pointed? See, there's that Cook County education coming through.
There we
Education.
go.
So, what's been one of the big mentality shifts? What's something that just in your short time as an investor, what are you thinking differently? So, I love this because you're a lot younger than me, but
Mhm.
age doesn't matter. It's all
Yeah,
experience. So, what's changed? What's something that's changed for you?
absolutely. And before I answer that question, I want to go a quick second to the buybacks and how buybacks are so important.
Mhm.
One of my holdings, Discover Financial Services, ticker symbol DFS, they have reduced their share count 49% in the last decade. And that's how like valuable like it brings. And I look for companies like that. Discover has done a really good job with that. I know Kroger's done a pretty good job at buying back shares. But Discover, though, it's a stock that I don't see a lot of people talking about. And the best way I like to talk about Discover is obviously, like there's the shows like Dave Ramsey where people talk about all their credit card debt and stuff. There's another show that I personally like to watch. Have you ever heard of Caleb Hammer?
Uh, no, I don't believe I have. Is he the credit
This
card
guy,
guy on YouTube? One of them?
um, so kind of it's think about it as the kind of the same concept of what Dave Ramsey does, but in a more real and realistic sense. So he's just more straight up with you. This kid started on YouTube last year. He got 500,000 followers in a year. And if you watch his show, it's like people talking about their finances and their budgeting. And it's the same concept as Ramsey, but I love watching it because sometimes you see some of these decisions of people with like six figures in credit card debt, and most of them have Discover credit cards. So that's like one of my bold thesis, like, okay, this is why I like to invest in Discover. But they have really good stats overall. 17% dividend increase this year, buying back shares like crazy. So just wanted to put a plug in for that. But overall, let's talk about what has been my shift in the last year. Couple things. When I started, I thought having more companies was better. I learned that it was becoming too much, and I wasn't building out my positions like I like them to. So I think at one point I was at like 31. Now I'm at like 23. So it's not that much of a shift, but I like the Coke, Pepsi's, Procter and Gamble's, and all of those things, and same with utility companies, same with industrial things in the industrial sector. I ETF them out through sector ETFs, and it's worked better for me. I still get exposure to the companies that I know that would be so hard for me to build out, like Pepsi, John Deere, Lockheed Martin, Costco. I know Costco's in the one for consumer staples. It would be impossible for me to build those out individually, but as an ETF, it worked out wonders for me. So that's one of the things. My second thing that I shifted my mindset to when I first started investing was PADI goals, projected annual dividend income. So for me, it was all about reaching that $50 mark, $100 mark.
Mhm.
I still use it as like a benchmark inspiration, but now I'm kind of shifting to total return is more important, and getting that mixture of stock appreciation and patty. There's some stocks that they have their job right, that you know that they're not going to get appreciation. You kind of have to wait for the right time to buy them, and you kind of buy for income, and then you look at a total return, it'll be good. But I'm starting to shift a little bit more to focus a little bit less about focusing so heavily on like how much this thing, how what the yield is or how much this pays out, but more focusing on is like what's the appreciation looking like and what's the dividend growth looking like. So like Kroger is like my best example for that. I think Kroger yields like 2.5 right now. And people, I've had discussions like, oh, that's pretty low. It's like, I'm not looking at it for now. I'm looking at this on a 10-year when we can look at yield on cost. And that's kind of what I'm trying to a little bit focus my mindset to. That's why I have like Discover. I mentioned Kroger. What else do I have like that? That's a pretty good compounder. I mean, Lowe's is a king, but Lowe's is a pretty good compounder. Target, obviously, Target's a little bit different, but I mean, they had a pretty good run until obviously they have a couple things they need to fix, which I agree with. I'm kind of glad they did a 1.9 increase this year
Hmm.
because they got other problems they got to fix. And now it kind of thinks to me is like I have AT&T still in the portfolio. AT&T, I'm lucky. My cost on it is like $15.80. I only have like 10 shares of it. I only add to AT&T if it reaches low 15s or under 15, and that's kind of how I've been doing it. But I come to the point, it's like, is it even worth doing it if it gets to like 18, 19 a share, yield on, the total return will look decent, but it's like, is it worth it? And that's something I need to have a conversation with myself about.
All very good things. And what I love is how we change a little bit and we're allowed to change. And I tell people this, and I've had people push back and say, way back when you said this. But the smart thing is if you have new information and new experience, that should shape what you're doing right now and into the future. I think it would just be so silly to say, well, I'm thinking differently about things now, but because I said something 3 years ago, I'm not going to do
Mm-hmm.
this thing that I think might be a better path. And that's
Yeah.
part of the joy and the fun of what we're doing, and everybody watching that shares your thoughts and your comments with us, because it helps us learn and grow as investors. And that's the part of this community, like the whole community aspect is, we're not professionals, we're not experts, we're trying to figure this thing out and learn and grow and share what we're learning with everybody else. And I just love that where you are now kind of shifting more toward ETFs, and just that's what's right for you right now, and it feels right. And it's just part of that whole psychology. And when I was listening to you talk, it was making me think how, now I don't play golf. Do you play golf?
Does Top Golf count?
I don't know. Sure, it counts.
Hey,
uh,
I mean, you have a couple beers and whack some balls. I
yeah.
mean, that's as close as I'm gonna get.
Well, we do some things like that. Golf's not involved, but um, so what I was going to say before you put that fantastic thought into my mind is that it's kind of like golf, where it's more or less a game against yourself, and I think investing is a game against yourself. It's mental, it's psychological about, well, because think of it, right? I think there's only two things that we can control, or we have control over, is what we buy and what we sell. When and what we buy, and when and what we sell. Really, we have no control over anything else. Dividend increases, management decisions, just how
Hmm.
long you're going to hold something and when you decide to buy it, right?
Yeah, the main thing, at least I can say from my original theory that still hasn't changed, is I'll see investors who will build up their dry powder funds and maybe not put money into the market. I still have the belief that I don't care whether the market's green, yellow, red, purple, magenta.
Ooh.
I'm gonna make the same contributions every 2 weeks, no matter what happens. Once it gets to a point where it's a pretty sizable portfolio, then maybe what I'll do is that out of my contribution, 75% I'll put in, and then maybe put 25% into a dry powder fund because I do want to maybe have that up one day. But right now, I'm just trying to gather assets and build this up. And no matter what happens, that's something that I won't change because it's a behavior, right? Because then if I'm not investing into the market, because, oh, you know what, it's on a run up, I want to wait, that's timing the market, in my opinion. And then at that point, if everything is kind of going up into a green, it's like, okay, well, I can average up on ETFs. I still want to get build ups and get some contributions in because you're missing out on gains potentially. And that's something that has not changed for me still.
Nice, nice, man. You said we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Mhm.
The most important information and data for investors is tomorrow, and unfortunately, we don't have access to that information as of yet. I know some people are working on it,
Mhm.
so that's fantastic. And I want to ask you, what then? You kind of listed a few. What is your favorite? Give me. You don't have to go deep. Just a couple stocks that you're looking at or ticker symbols that you're looking at buying right now. What's your kind of your thing right now?
So as far as like new positions or adding to the portfolio,
Anything, whatever. You pick.
um,
Dealer's choice.
okay, so if I'm going to go in the portfolio, recently Kroger, Vici, and Target were getting a lot of funds from me. Right now, month of July, ETF only month. I'm only going to contribute to ETFs, with the exception of the $12 I put into Starbucks yesterday because I spent $12 at Starbucks over the weekend. So it's only fair to match that. But right
Thank you,
now,
by the way.
all
Thank you as a Starbucks shareholder. I appreciate that.
no, absolutely. But right now, I'm literally looking at this month to either make it just making it a VTI month, a VU month, a QQQM month, and then my sector ETFs. And for SCHD, other than I do the weekly challenge into it. My exposure to SCHD is a little bit higher than I like it to be. So I want to build out some of the other ETFs to kind of balance things out a little bit better. So honestly, I'm really going to focus on the 5 to 6 holdings in my portfolio. As far as what I'm looking at, that's I have sitting in the watch list, it's McDonald's, which has been there since the beginning of the year. ADC, which is Agree Realty. The reason why I haven't pulled the trigger on that is just because I want to build out what I have still, so I'm not really in a rush to add something new. And I've kept Comcast on there. If it ever, I have a price alert on it. If it ever hits, then I'll look at it. But like I said, a telecom, I'm not really in a rush to add to that sector, but it does have exposure to Nintendo, so that's kind of why I always kind of keep it in the back of my mind.
Nintendo's an interesting pick. That's one that I think a lot of people don't realize is a dividend paying stock.
It is. It's a variable paying dividend, and it's one of those where I think one day I'll buy like a couple shares just to say I own it because I've been a user of the product since as long as I can remember, and I still am. What I want to see with video games, it's that direct to consumer, and there's a big shift into that. GameStop, I don't think GameStop lasts another 5 years, and I'm going to give you an honest, really deep, honest opinion. And the profit margins on companies doing buying through their e-store is so much higher, and then that just it makes the games profitable quicker, and there's just so much more available to that. And it's just they're even doing this thing where they're offering more content. Hey, you buy it from us, we'll give you this extra costume for the character, we'll give you this extra map, we'll give you this extra character, and that's how you create value to get people to buy it from you instead of going to the brick and mortar. And I think there's going to be a shift with that.
So you're
I think
talking about like the extra costumes and things. Are you saying when people buy directly from Nintendo or buying through GameStop's
through
online?
Nintendo. I mean, GameStop does do that, but I've been seeing though, like with like video game companies are gonna start doing this with like PlayStation, Xbox, all these. They're gonna start creating more value of why you should buy it through their server instead of going to the store. Also, one of the big selling points is a lot of companies will let you pre-download the game before it comes out. That way, once it's released, you can instantly play it without having to wait for the time. So I think that's going to be a big shift. Also, Nintendo is they're trying to experiment with like mobile, like, pay to play, like mobile apps and stuff like that. And that's where a lot of the money is right now in video games, to be completely honest.
Yeah, man, great point. It's funny how we somehow went on to GameStop, and I agree. I think
Mhm.
there's so many people that are going to get burned. They're just playing that game, and I like we said, and we'll end it with that. Is that stocks always follow earnings? It's like an immutable law of nature. It has to. You can go like we're seeing maybe 3, 4, 5 years where it doesn't. It's a voting machine, but like Ben Graham, God rest his soul. I mean, if a company has declining or no earnings for 10 years, I don't see how otherwise they're just buying a story and people are going to lose patience. So really good
Mhm.
thought. I like that. It makes me think more about Microsoft. They're just going to start selling direct to the consumer. Just buy right from
Apple.
us. You get it immediately and you're playing, no worries.
And then Apple, I mean, you look at these companies, it's like, these compounders. And I mean, Apple just hit what was it? It was like 3 trillion in market
3T.
cap this week.
Yeah. So Harris, where can people reach you? What do you got going on the pod? Give us a little bit of the inside scoop. What do you got coming up? What you cooking over there?
Sure. So July is going to be a fun month. Next month in August, it's the 1 year of the podcast. Episode 50, I've secured a really big guest. I'm keeping that one on the DL. But the week after that is the 1 year, which that I'm just going to say it right now. You and Ryan, you guys got to block off your calendar because we're going to literally have an hour of just conversation there. So that's what I want to do for the 1 year. I want to talk to two of my closest friends in this space and just, talk some shit, shoot some shit.
I'm down. I can't wait for that. And I'm excited to hear who this guest is. I have some guesses, but I won't, we'll wait. We'll see who it is. So where can everyone reach you? Where, can people get in touch with the one, the only Harris Elliott if they want to?
On Twitter, One Penny Podcast, Instagram, One Penny at a Time Podcast, and you can look me up One Penny at a Time, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Podcast, wherever it is, any podcast provider.
Yeah, I'll have links to all those below, and as well as a link to, was it Caleb Hammer?
Yes. You should watch one of his episodes, and it's a complete S show, but it's worth the watch.
Okay, we'll do, man. So, hey, thank you once again. I'm looking forward to being on your pod and being one of the friends of the show, man. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for doing this on Independence Day.
Peace
out. All right,
out,
everybody. We will see you in the next episode.